Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr. H's Hot Pot. You join me today, not in sunny Orlando, Florida, in the USA, despite the sunglasses, but in dear old Blighty, where at this moment in time we're experiencing what used to be called an Indian summer. No doubt, under Keir Starmer, that phrase is probably frowned upon now. But I've come today for a bit of a bimble on the Rivington Anglezarke moorland. And I'm currently making my way towards an old ruin called Higher Hempshaws, which was a farmhouse that stood on these moors in the 19th century. In fact, all of this area is littered with old farmhouse ruins, some of which was used as target practice during the Second World War. So with a bit of luck, we might be able to find some old 303 cartridge casings when we get to this ruin. Now, moving forward, I'm going to be trying to do more bimbles, as well as a few pie reviews, but mainly bimbles, to try and get rid of the old gut, because I did enjoy some stereotypical American grub whilst I was out there. So, with Christmas, I'm sorry to use the C word so early on, but with that looming down the road, I want to try and get ahead of the curve and lose a little bit of weight before that madness is upon us. In fact, believe it or not, Mrs. H, right in the last few days of August when we come back home, she nipped out for a few essentials, and there was a shop, B&M I think it was actually stocking Christmas goods. And I have made a little bit of a promise to myself to boycott any shop that I find has Christmas goods before November. I know that's a big ask because they try and get it on shelves as quickly as they can, but that's what I'm going to try and do. Pretty easy for me, Hot Potters, because I can go 2 years without doing any shopping. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's make our way to this ruin, because I find these old ruins fascinating. I used to come up here when I was in my teens, which is many moons ago now, and hopefully I'll still be able to make my way to this one and remember where it is. But I used to come up here and do a lot of walking, and I always found them fascinating. The fact that people once lived and worked and even died on this moorland. There's somebody coming past with an horse, I'll let them get past. Morning. I'll let that get past for two reasons. Number one, it's creeping up behind me, and as many of you know, Mr. H has a bit of a phobia regarding horses. I was once crossing over a field on a bimble, and one of them came up. He must have thought it was feeding time, and actually took a chunk out of my shirt. So I've always been wary of them ever since. But yeah, it's always fascinated me that people once lived, worked and died on these inhospitable moors. You know, I mean, on a day like today, it's lovely. But in winter, I wouldn't like to be up here. Anyway, I'm going to make my way over these moors. Join me in a little while when we find something else that's interesting to take a look at, because I am on a bit of a path here and farmers use it and stuff. So once I get back on the public footpath, we'll be able to chat a little bit more freely. So, Potters, I'm now on the public footpath, and I'm a little bit in the shade here, so I can do away with the sunglasses for a bit. And it's a tad overgrown, this footpath. I'll just quickly show you. That's what we're going to be making our way up. And the first ruin that we should come to is one called Old Rachel's. I won't be taking a look at that one, but we'll be passing that and continuing on to Higher Hempshaws. And I've made the fatal mistake, Hot Potters, of not putting the correct footwear on, as the old trainers are leaking a little bit, and I'm going to end up with a soggy foot by the time I get back to the old jalopy, but who cares? It's all part of the experience. But yeah, it's good to be back home, to be honest, Hot Potters. It's great being out on holiday, but after a bit, you do start pining for and missing things that you can only get back home. For me, it's usually the pies, the fish and chips, and Warby's bread, funnily enough. Nobody makes bread better than Warburton's, in Mr H's humble opinion. But yeah, the reason these farmhouses all disappeared is that Liverpool needed water as it was growing, as it was moving towards the Industrial Revolution. They needed catchment areas, and the Liverpool Water Corporation started buying up all of this land. And they didn't kick the farmers off immediately, but what they started doing, they started jacking rents up, and it just started getting more difficult for the farmers to make a living. And as the Industrial Revolution started off, farmers' sons thought, hang on, I can make more money working in one of them factories in these big burgeoning towns that are being built, rather than getting up at a sparrow's fart and working hard on my father's farm for next to nothing. Fortunately, once they got to the big towns and cities, they found out that they was still getting up at a sparrow's fart and working hard, basically, for a pittance. And what they was doing was lining someone else's pockets rather than the family's. Well, that's the way it goes, isn't it? We always think we know better than our parents. I know I did when I was a young man, and I found myself, as I've become a father myself, coming out with exactly the same statements to Toby that my dad said to me. And at times I do say to him, come on Toby, you're having me sounding like my dad. Anyway, it's getting a little bit boggy and overgrown here, so I'm going to cut the film here and join me when we get to Old Rachel's farmhouse ruin. And as we leave that little shaded area behind and just walk up this little rise here, we get the first of the moorland winds, which I hope hasn't been captured on camera. If it does, I apologise. But there's a little post here indicating the way to Higher Hempshaws. It says there, it actually means Higher Hempshaws. So I'm going to do as the signpost advises and make my way in that direction and follow this footpath over to these farmhouse ruins. And here we are, Hot Potters. This is all that's left of Old Rachel's farmhouse here on the Anglezarke / Rivington Moors. I've no idea why it was called Old Rachel's. Presumably that would have been one of the first occupants of this farm. I do apologise for any wind that will be caught on this film. We are out on the moors, as you can see. We are wide out in the open here, but it's some beautiful scenery. As I say, the moors are lovely in summer, early autumn, but getting to the depths of winter, I should imagine it's not too nice being up here, and only the hardened walkers will come up here then. Now, this farmhouse is worthy of a video all of its own, and we will probably do that, but for now what I'll try and do is put in some period photographs of what this looked like back in the day, and you'll be able to see it in its full glory. And today it's just a pile of stone rubble. It's a shame, really. As I say, these were once people's homes. All families, generations of families, would have lived, worked and died here. I believe one of the last occupants of this farmhouse is buried in Rivington churchyard, and should I come here and do a video on this farmhouse, we'll probably go and visit that grave. believe this was once the barn, and the farmhouse would have been just over the other side there of that wall that would have divided them. This isn't the farmhouse that we're coming to take a look at today. What we're going to be doing is making our way down over there. We'll go in the valley where hopefully it won't be as windy. Right, top potters, with the ruins of old Rachel's farmhouse to my left there and behind me, I'm now making my way to Higher Hempshaws, which I'll just quickly turn the camera around and hopefully you'll be able to see in the distance. It's just there by the side of that tree. Hopefully you managed to see that, but I've got to cross the River Yarra before I get to that farmhouse ruin. Hopefully there's a bit of a footbridge or something there, because as I say, I've not brought any suitable footwear. I was that excited to get out and do a bimble as I've left them in the car and brought a pair of wellies. Still in holiday mode, hot potters. It's took me a week to get over the jet lag, believe it or not, because I was literally straight off the plane and more or less straight into work. I would not advise an 8-hour flight and then going into work the same day. It's knocked me up for about a week. That's why it took so long to edit the couple of videos that I did whilst I was out in the United States. Now, apologies once again to anybody out there who enjoyed the daily vlogs that I did the previous year, but I've simply not had time, and if I'm being honest, they didn't really go down that well with many people. I've found that when I've gone out to the United States, people don't tend to watch the videos, my normal subscribers, and that's simply because that's not what you've signed up for, is it? That's why I don't do anything in the Walt Disney parks. Let's be honest, there's enough vloggers out there doing that kind of thing, and they'll do it a lot better than I can, so there's no point me trying to add my 2 penneth worth just for the sake of trying to chase a few subscribers or get a couple of hits on a video. Anyway, hopefully these sheep will stay out of my way. Once again, I'm not really keen on curious farm animals, and I'll be able to make my way over the River Yarra, which at this point it's not a raging river, it's only a bit of a stream. Just make my way through this little kissing gate here. Unfortunately, Mrs H isn't here for me to kiss. And we'll continue. What we've got to do is carefully make our way down there and back up the other side. I can just hear it running below me. But it's not been too bad of a bimble list so far. Although there is a bit of a black cloud, rather ominously, forming over where the transmitter is at Winter Hill. Hopefully I'll be able to get down here, have a mooch around, wrap the video up and skedaddle back to the old jalopy before the heavens open. And another reason I've chosen Higher Hempshaws is there's actually still 2 windows in one of the gable end walls that you'll be able to see. It's a familiar landmark for anybody who does any hiking over this moorland. I think the last time I was up this end, I was with Mrs H. We'd come over here. We had Lucy and little Rosie, the Jack Russell I used to have. And it wasn't a bad walk. No little Toby back then, he wasn't even thought of. It wasn't even a glint in his daddy's eye. Oh, that's a good hole. There's a little stone that leads over the river. I had visions of me having to take my trainers and socks off there and wade through barefoot. Not be the first time I've done that, hot potters. But I'm going to cut it here because, as you'll be able to see, I need to concentrate. I don't want to end up going bum over pap. Right, well, that's the River Yarra safely negotiated. I'm now on the other side, and it's just basically the last little slog up to Higher Hempshaws Farmhouse ruins, where hopefully we'll be able to find a few 303 cartridge casings from the Second World War. I know that when hikers and that come up here and they find any cartridges, they'll put them on a stone somewhere or on a fence post where people can easily see them and take a look at them. Should we find any, we'll take a look at them and we'll put them back where we found them. I won't take them as a souvenir or anything like that. Why rob other people of taking a look at them? Anyway, I'm going to make my way along this farm track now. Just along this ruined wall, and we should get to the actual farmhouse ruins. So join me once we get there. I need to pick up pace because that cloud's rolling in fast. So we've made it, hot potters. This is Higher Hempshaws Farmhouse ruin up here on the moorland of Anglezarke / Rivington. There you can, in the middle of the screen, you can just see its window openings, which makes it a rather iconic landmark amongst hikers and ramblers who come over this way. And as you can see, the clouds in the background there, hovering, looking rather foreboding and rather ominous. Now, way back over there, just to the right of those trees, up on that hill, that's where we've made our way from. That's where old Rachel's farmhouse ruin is, that we took a look at earlier on in this video. We're now going to carefully make our way over and see what we can find here. Apparently this was definitely used for target practice by the British Army during the Second World War. So we may be able to find some remnants of that with a bit of luck. Obviously, it's got way overgrown over here since the 1940s. Another thing that always amazes me with these old cottages is they don't seem very big, the rooms. Obviously what's happened here is the walls have gone round there and they've just been knocked in, so you can make out how big this room would have been. And they used to sleep with the livestock as well, a lot of these farmers. Looks like someone's made a bit of a bench there out of the stone ruins. That's probably where the fireplace would have been. Or it's been a doorway and they've used the stones that was stood up and just put one over there to make a bench. We might go and sit on that later. But yeah, that's the only surviving bit of this farmhouse. Like I say, I love coming looking at these old ruins. Sort of reminds me of a kid when they was doing the clearance areas, demolition in the 1980s of terraced houses. And as kids we'd all make for the rubble after they'd demolish them. There's some pretty hefty big stones amongst that. So it just shows you the building work that would have gone into this. That would have been another little room there, no doubt. Unfortunately, there are no period photographs of this particular farmhouse, so we've no idea what it looked like. That was obviously an opening into the other room. There's that bench that somebody's made. Obviously ramblers come up here and do exactly what Mr H is going to do. Park the bum on it. You can just make out the old wooden lintel there. That would have gone and spanned the window. But this is it. As I said, there's no real prize to these type of bimbles. It's just a bimble and a chat to try and get back into shape a little bit after the excesses of America. We'll take a look at these window openings from the other side. Another thing you've got to watch out for when you come up these type of places is obviously they had no running water. These farmhouses, they would have relied on wells, and if the things are uncovered, you don't want to be ending up disappearing down one of them. So I'm very mindful of where I walk. I should imagine this little bit here would have been a bit of a farmyard back in the day. But there we go. Those are the window openings. And there is where the entranceway would have been. That stone there probably being the lintel at one time or another. And we've got this little part here. Whether or not this would have been the well back in the day, who knows? Very difficult once Mother Nature comes and starts growing over things to actually picture it as it would have been. But imagine living up here, hot potters, in the wilds, a wild and lonely place. That tree is also probably original. It was probably only a sapling when this farmhouse stood here. Anyway, I'm going to whip the camera around now, hot potters, and wrap this one up. Right, hot potters, well that'll just about do it. I've just had the fright of my life as I've started lining my shot up and that. I've just seen that wall there peeking out from outside that window, and I thought it was somebody stood there. It looked like it was moving. But on that note, that'll just about do it. I hope you've enjoyed today's little video coming up here, taking a look at these two farmhouse ruins up here on the Anglezarke / Rivington moorland. Sometimes it's just nice coming out for a bit of a bimble and stretching the old legaroonies and not really having any kind of game plan or any target to aim for. Speaking of targets, unfortunately, I've not been able to find any 303 casings. They are amongst this, but sometimes it's just a case of being lucky and finding one. Who knows, maybe on another video we'll actually come across any. Anyway, with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. So, I'm going to head off now, back to the old homestead to edit up all this footage, ready for your edification as always. So until the next time, from myself, Mr H, it is, bye-bye for now.